Hello, my friends. This is Lynda Lippin, and welcome to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Well, hello, my friends, and welcome one more time to the Pilates Goddess podcast. This is your host, Lynda Lippin, and today we're talking about rocking the Pilates boat. I think that I have mentioned on the podcast before that the Pilates community, quote unquote, community, is rife with discord, with disagreement, with debate. And as as many of you may know, I blame a lot of this discord and debate on the lawsuit that was filed over the trademark to the word Pilates. And while that trademark lawsuit did not end well for the folks who were trying to, quote unquote, protect the trademark and did open up the Pilates name as a generic term, what it also opened up was a whole lot of animosity, a whole lot of anger, and a whole lot of disagreement that is still happening today, many, many years later. I've spoken in other episodes about the lawsuit and about the fallout from the lawsuit. So I will put some links to those episodes in the show notes. So if you have not listened to, all 81 of the episodes, you can go back and at least listen to the ones that are pertinent to this discussion. So basically, the camps of classical Pilates and contemporary Pilates were not really camps or set up prior to the lawsuit. Prior to the U.S. lawsuit over the trademark Pilates, there were just lots of different, maybe styles of Pilates, but that you could see where they all went back to what Joseph Pilates himself taught. So we had kind of an East Coast style that was more maybe of a classical style, what we call it now classical. We had a little bit of a West Coast style where maybe they taught things slightly differently or in a slightly different order, or maybe added some different choreography. But at that time, there were probably under 1,000 Pilates studios in the country. And so not a whole lot of Pilates instructors. And we pretty much all got along. It was only after the trademark lawsuit and due to a lot of the anger and animosity that was built up during that time. For example, for myself, I just couldn't deal with the fact that the quote unquote classical Pilates people were suing the rest of the Pilates teachers in the world and the world, by the way. Even though this was a U.S. trademark lawsuit, they actually attempted to stop Pilates studios in other countries from using the word Pilates, which was not even in the scope of the lawsuit or the trademark. But when this lawsuit happened, I got really upset and basically cut ties with the original New York Romana-based Pilates community, which was very sad for me, by the way, because I was originally trained by those folks and in that style when I was an undergraduate at SUNY Purchase here in Westchester County, New York, which is where I was introduced to Pilates. So as Pilates has progressed, We now have entire certification programs that don't even encompass the entire system of Pilates and all the apparatus. So you can do mat only, you can do reformer only, you can do chair only, you can do Cadillac Tower / springboard only certifications. And what we end up with now is a whole lot of branded Pilates certifications, right? So if you look at a lot of teacher training, whether you're looking at STOT or BASI or balanced body or peak, you are actually looking at instructor certifications that are being sponsored and hosted by Pilates equipment manufacturers, which, kind of, I guess, works out well for them because they get to train you on their equipment and then you'll buy their equipment, right, to become the Peak Studio or the Balanced Body Studio or the STOT Studio or the Basi Studio. It's very interesting how this has happened. Basically, when I was training, you found a studio where you liked doing your Pilates. You showed some interest in possibly teaching it. And then they kind of took you under their wing and you hung out a lot and you watched and you learned and you did until somebody kind of patted you on the back and said that you were ready to teach people and deal with the public. I was a founding member of the Physical Mind Institute, right, which actually started the first, what I would call official certification, where it was recognized by the American Council on Exercise, where people could get continuing education credits, and where the system was kind of laid out very simply, very programmatically, and taught to people who wanted to learn to teach Pilates. What I find now, especially in the age of social media, because you have to remember that I started doing this before the internet and before social media was even a thing, is that what we see on social media is a lot of quote unquote influencers. And especially in the Pilates and fitness space, you're talking about influencers who may be getting paid by specific brands, and they don't always disclose that they're getting paid by the brands, okay, to share content specifically about that brand. What we also see are folks who say go viral because they've posted, some video or some reel or some shot of exercises that sometimes are actual Pilates exercises, most of the time are not, but that look really cool and that highlight their like flexibility or their butt or, whatever body part they're focusing on. And the rest of us look at that and think that that's Pilates and that's what we do in the Pilates studio. And most of the time it isn't. So if you haven't yet, I highly encourage you, if you're on Instagram, to go and look at the account, The Pilates Convo. Literally, that's the name of the account, The Pilates Convo. And the reason why I'm suggesting that you look at that is whether you are a Pilates client or a Pilates teacher or an apprentice, is that account highlights a lot of the discord, a lot of the abuse, a lot of the nastiness that is happening in the Pilates world right now. To the point where I actually went online and did a search for my name and for this podcast name. And while I did discover a lot of good reviews of the podcast and a lot of places where people had shared it, I did discover, a couple where somebody asked about the podcast. What do you think about it? What do you think about Lynda? And people responded with stuff like, I hate it. I think it's useless. And so does everybody in my studio, including the master teachers, which led me to then, comment and just say, hey, this is me. And I would love to hear what about it you found so horrifying, or what about it you don't like, or what about it, appears to scare everybody in your studio. And of course, I never get responses to that, right? There's no dialogue being had. They just want to trash and move on. And that's kind of what happens now in this time of social media and of bots and of all the things, right? People feel like they can go online and say nasty things about you and then not have any fallout from that, and not, frankly, even have to respond with any kind of debate or dialogue, after the fact. But as I read through a lot of the posts in the Pilates Convo threads, and new things come up every day, I'm seeing a lot of the same themes. And these themes are very concerning to me, because these themes are all about people creating their little space and their little niche, and not wanting their teachers or their clients or their apprentices to see anything else that might be going on in the Pilates world. To the point where clients are actually leaving Pilates because they're hearing, as they go to the bathroom, or as maybe they're changing their clothes right next to the staff, hangout room, that they are hearing things that are so nasty that they don't want to come back. They're hearing master teachers complain about apprentices. They're hearing people's complaints about them, like teachers complaining about clients within earshot of the clients. And they're also hearing about people kind of being censored on social, or being told to make their accounts a little more politically correct, right? Or not post anything ever that is remotely negative or questionable about, say, the style of Pilates being taught in the studio. Now, you guys know that I rock the Pilates boat all the time, and I don't really care, because I speak my truth and what I know about the industry, about Pilates, and about human beings. That means that, for example, there are entire studio chains like Club Pilates that refuse to talk to me. Okay. I will never be able to work at one of them because of things that I've said about how they teach and how they train their teachers here on the podcast. And I'm okay with that, because I will never be teaching a 12-person reformer class. That's music driven. That's just not going to happen. So since I'm never going to do that, being excluded for me is fine. But if you're coming up as an apprentice or a trainee, or as a new teacher, or, you're not sure where you fit in the Pilates scheme of things, that can be really scary. It can be a very scary situation. And you start to see people really start to question what they've been doing and how they've been taught to do it. People are wondering if different programs might have a better fit for them. People are wondering why they're being told that they only ever need to learn mat and reformer because, all of the other equipment is kind of based on the reformer. And I've heard this in the past. People are also starting to wonder if they were only accepted into a Pilates teacher training program or into an apprentice position because the studio owner basically really, really needs the money and really needs teachers and brought them in, right? So I've talked here before about the fact that you have a lot of apprentices and trainees being put into sessions and classes with folks with back pain and with injuries and with chronic illnesses that they are in no way prepared to deal with, which is really puts everybody into a bad situation, right? It makes the client feel crappy. It makes the teacher feel crappy. And at the end of the day, it drives somebody away from Pilates. Now, I'm not asking for everybody in the Pilates world to be teaching the same thing or to be on the same page about everything. I think, that's impossible and not something anyone should expect. But what I do expect is some respect. What I do expect is Pilates teachers and studios to want to come together a tiny bit to just make sure that there is maybe a little bit of regulation, that there is a little bit of fairness in the industry, that maybe teacher training programs might have some kind of, consistency or consistency in terms of what's expected, in terms of hours, in terms of observation, in terms of training, in terms of how much these programs cost, in terms of how many hundreds of hours you need to spend. And I would also love to see a lot more collaboration. I've spoken about this a lot, okay? I am one of those people who refers clients out when either I can't handle them, either I don't have the bandwidth, or I don't have time in my schedule, or they just need, or they're just not my niche right now. For example, I used to specialize in diastasis recti and pre and postnatal. And I still did a lot of work with chronic pain. I've always done a lot of work with joint replacements and arthritis and spine issues and chronic illnesses and all of those things. But my specialty really used to be really kind of complex, longer term diastasis recti cases. And I don't do that anymore. But I still will be contacted by folks who need really specific work in handling their diastasis, which is, if you don't know, that's the separation of the abdominals that you can get after pregnancy. So what do is I send these people to a different teacher. Or sometimes people will contact me who are not in New York, who want in-studio sessions. And I happen to have a wide network of friends who I know are great teachers, who have different specialties, who are all over the world. And I'll just be like, great, you're in Barcelona, you should go to this person. You're in LA, you should go to this person, wherever they are. And even here in Lower Manhattan, once again, if it's something I can't do myself, I send folks to my old colleagues at Real Pilates. I send folks to different teachers in the city who I know can help them. And you want to know something? That works out well for everybody because, number one, that puts me at top of mind for referrals. If they get clients that they can't really deal with, but they know I can with all of my experience, right? And it also keeps me connected to a community. And I'm telling you right now that not all of the teachers that I refer to are quote unquote classically trained. Some of them are very contemporary teachers. I don't care as long as they are very good at what they do and their clients have good outcomes. Okay. That's what should be at the heart of any Pilates business, is serving clients so that the clients have good outcomes. Once again, serving our Pilates clients so that clients have good outcomes. Not that they necessarily stay with us for 10 or 20 years, although I've had that experience. Okay. Not necessarily that they want to continue doing Pilates for the rest of their lives and teach, although most people do. Not necessarily the teaching part, but definitely the wanting to continue doing it for the rest of their lives. But so that the client feels and functions better. And that may be something that happens in the shorter term. And then maybe your client walks away and is like, I feel great. Thank you so much. Or maybe your client's like, well, now that that particular back pain situation is over, I would love to explore the rest of the system and see what else my body can do and where else we can progress with this. Okay. So once again, kind of like I said last week in the You Can Say No episode, I want to encourage any Pilates clients who are questioning whether they want to stay in a particular studio or a situation because they're not sure that they are being effectively taught, or they are not sure that the studio is treating the teachers and the apprentices and the trainees well, just due to stuff they're seeing and hearing around the studio. I want to encourage you to look at other studios in your area, to check out things online, and to try different teachers in different places. By the same token, I want to encourage all of the Pilates teachers listening to do the same thing. Before you settle on a training program, if you're a new teacher or wanting to teach, I encourage you to visit pretty much every studio in your area that does teacher training. Talk to folks who have been through their training. And frankly, if the studio doesn't allow you to talk to any of their graduates or any of their current trainees or apprentices, that's not a program you want to engage in, because that means they're worried you're going to hear something bad. If you enroll in a teacher training program and one of the questions that you're asked is, what's your social media? Because they want to check you and make sure you're somehow correctly in tune with their studio, once again, walk away. Because they should care about whether you're going to turn into a good teacher wherever you teach that's going to give your clients good outcomes, period. End of discussion. And if you're a studio owner who either has a teacher training program or is looking to start one, what I encourage you to do is sit down and do a lot of self work. Do a lot of thinking about why you want to start the program, about how you want to run your program, about how you want to appear to your apprentices, and really go deep on the fact that people are going to be paying you a whole lot of money for this training. They are expecting a good outcome. They are also expecting good service and good customer service. I remind you that your apprentices and trainees are clients. They are customers who are paying you for a service and a particular outcome. And if instead you're going to give them a whole bunch of crap, or you're going to treat them like shit because they're apprentices, or you're going to, grab onto them and have them teach privates and classes that are out of their scope of practice because you need the instructors, then you might want to rethink why you're doing a teacher training program. And instead, you might want to expand your business by bringing in renters and hiring other teachers and doing it that way. Because anyone who's paying you for a service deserves good service, deserves friendliness, deserves respect, and deserves attention. And if you're not planning on doing that, If you think that you can just treat apprentices like shit, then maybe you shouldn't be doing teacher training. Yes, I said that. So guys, once again, thank you for listening to the Pilates Goddess podcast. If you love the podcast, please go to Spotify, Podchaser, the Apple Podcast app, and leave a rating or a written review. If you have thoughts and comments about this episode, I would love to hear them. You can email me, Lynda@lindalippin.com. There'll be a link in the show notes. You can contact me via DM on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on all the social media. But I have a feeling that this particular episode is going to start some conversations, that people are going to have some strong opinions about it. And I would love to be a part of those conversations. Thank you once again for listening, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Music brought to you by Nerd Salad. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, especially if you liked it. And please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks.